Hello and welcome to Chicago Reacts. My name is Lauren and today I am going back into the world of Elden Rings. Several people have suggested that I look at the Vaati videos, so here I am at VaatiVidya. I'm starting at the beginning of a playlist. This is Elden Rings Lore Explained. This is kind of an older video, but they are still posting stuff to this playlist. So I figured I'll start with this one. It's a little bit shorter than some of the others, but if there is a specific video that you want me to look at, I absolutely will. So this is just, I think, about the base game, not the Erdtree. So yeah, this is like the base game lore stuff, which is great. This is something that I would like to know more about, because I was enjoying like watching the boss fights and seeing that kind of thing. But let's get me a greater understanding of what's actually happening in this world. I hope you enjoy. If you want to see more stuff like this, go ahead and let me know by liking the video, hitting subscribe, and again, commenting, letting me know if there's something specific I should be looking at. With that being said, let's begin.
Our story doesn't begin in the lands between. It begins in the cosmos, far away, with an outer god called the Greater Will. There are a lot of outer gods mentioned in Elden Ring. You can think of these kind of like the great ones of Bloodborne. They're distant beings, they're all-powerful, and they're quite unknowable by design. But many of these outer gods want to make their presence felt in the world. The Greater Will, maybe most of all. To this end, it sent a golden star hurtling towards the lands between. The Elden Star's incantation tells us that this golden star was bearing a beast, an Elden beast. The Elden Remembrance calls it a vassal beast of the great...
Okay, so just to start, what it seems like is we have these eldritch beings, but these eldritch beings don't care they're eldritch and want to be known anyway, and damn the consequences. Okay.
To will. If you didn't know, a vassal is someone who holds land on behalf of their overlord. Obviously, this is fitting in this case, because the Elden Beast occupied the lands between on behalf of the Greater Will, and was a living incarnation of the concept of order. As such, this beast would later become the Elden Ring. The Elden Ring itself is made up of runes of power, some great, some small, that together represent a sort of logic for the world to follow. Thus, the Elden Ring represents order. The true nature of this order is a subject of constant debate and research undergone by fundamentalists. But two of the key fundamentals are the laws of causality and regression. You can think of the law of causality as cause and effect.
Okay, so, but at the same time, though, is the ring like a physical ring like it is in Lord of the Rings? Or is it more of a metaphor? Or is it like a rune, you know? Or like, can you wear it?
Actions have consequences, and those consequences are new causes that branch out into infinity. These are the relationships between things. Then there's the law of regression that states that all things eternally yearn to converge and return to their roots. Fittingly, then, the Elden Ring is housed within the Erdtree, which towers over the lands between. But it's very important to stress that life in the lands between did not begin with the Erdtree, the Elden Ring, or the Elden Beast. No, the lands between were occupied well before the Greater Will came. There were other beings here. There were other factions here. There were other gods here. And there was even another great tree here before the Erdtree. And this is where a huge twist regarding the Erdtree comes in. So there are incantations in the game called aspects of the crucible.
All right, so is that why the gods wanted to be here then? Because, well, that's why this great will wanted to be here, because there was already stuff and it wanted to kind of hone in.
Comes in. So there are incantations in the game called aspects of the crucible. According to their descriptions, these are manifestations of the Erdtree's primal vital energies. And I quote, "They are an aspect of the primordial crucible where all life was once blended together." But how could all life be blended together in the Erdtree if the Erdtree appeared after life existed? Well, there can only be one answer, right?
Wibbly wobbly timey wimey?
that the Erdtree is a parasite, and it took over a tree that existed here before. This ancient tree was called the Great Tree. So the Great Tree was almost certainly the location of this primordial crucible, and it must have been a very powerful primordial force for the Greater Will to have commandeered. It might even be the reason the Lands Between is important to the Greater Will in the first place. It also explains why spells and enemies related to the Great Tree's crucible would eventually be looked down upon. For example, the knot talisman is fashioned from a knotted vestige of the crucible, and it was considered a signifier of the divine in ancient times, but is now increasingly disdained as an impurity as civilization has advanced.
Yup, advanced to this. Great, this is much better.
Enemies related to the crucible are the Omen, the Misbegotten, and the Crucible Knights, and all three of them would be shunned, enslaved, or imprisoned. Those who speak for the Erdtree don't want you to know its roots, so to speak. According to the spell...
Okay, I'm kind of getting the way that, like, Christians would come into various pagan lands and kind of commandeer, like, their traditions and festivals and stuff, but they don't want you to talk about that. Like, I think that's the reason that Christmas is in December at all, right? Because Jesus would have been born in the springtime, based on what we know of the region, and also, like, what was happening in the sky, and, like, what was, you know, this where the shepherds were at. So, like, but there was already a festival that happened in the winter, and so, well, in order to keep having that festival, we'll just say it's about Jesus now. I think is how that worked. And Halloween is something similar. Like they changed, you have All Souls Day, but then All Saints Day comes right after, so that they could kind of take some of that as well. That's the vibe I'm getting.
Protection of the Erdtree. In the beginning, everything was in opposition to the Erdtree, but through countless victories in war, it became the embodiment of order.
In Marica's own words, the Erdtree governs all. The choice is thine. Become one with the order, or divest thyself of it, to wallow at the fringes, a powerless upstart.
But the Greater Will needed more than a big tree. It needed loyal agents in the Lands Between. To this end, it has the Two Fingers, who are its envoys. The Two Fingers heirloom has a weird picture of them, but it reads, "Of course, fingers cannot speak, yet these are eloquent. Persistently they wriggle, spelling out mysteries in the air. Thus did we gain the words of our faith." These
Hopefully
words
no one lied.
are interpreted by the finger readers. These are the undying old crones that you would have found throughout the Lands Between. They pass down the wisdom of the Two Fingers, or at least they used to.
Or at least they said they did. Like, I don't know. Whenever there is a story about it's like, yes, this is a great and mystical being only I can interpret. Yeah, I don't ever believe that. Whenever there's just like one person or like one small faction saying, yes, this is the actual truth and only I can interpret it correctly, it's a scam. I find it a con.
Your fingers, please, your fingers. I can read them.
Most of them appear to have lost their purpose, and they're desperate to read your fingers and tell you annoying riddles, since their two fingers are likely dead. And yes, of course, there are multiple sets of Two Fingers. You would have found their corpses on the tops of the divine towers. Atop these towers, you loot the fingers in order to activate the true power of a great rune. Specifically, though, you are giving benediction back to your great rune. You're taking a blessing back from the two dead fingers, essentially. This is just one of many blessings that the Two Fingers can bestow, and my point is kind of that the Two Fingers clearly have more than just influence. They have real power on some level. The Greater Will needs these powerful envoys and agents because, while it's obviously incredibly powerful, it does seem limited by a few things.
The fact that it can't move or speak, really, and only has a bunch of old ladies to say what it means, and hopefully they're right.
Space. The Greater Will didn't come to the Lands Between itself. It sent an Elden beast to do its bidding instead. Second is time. There is a moment later in the game where your pair of two fingers go still because they're forced to commune with the greater will for guidance.
When they are finished, the fingers will again offer their guidance. But thousands, if not tens of thousands, of moons must first pass.
Oh, dang.
No matter for me. But you,
Yeah.
how will you ever manage the wait?
So the greater will needs a physical manifestation of order. It needs envoys to convey its will, but what it also needs is a god. Introducing Marica the Eternal. I have this utterly enormous mind map of Elden Ring's lore.
Wow.
And there's a reason she's at the center.
Holy
She's
crap.
essentially the equivalent of Gwyn from Dark Souls, except unlike Gwyn, Marica didn't just crawl out of the dark and find power. To an extent, it seems like she earned it. We don't know much about her origins, except that she is of the Numen race, which is actually an origin that you can choose in the character selection screen.
Cool.
Numen come from outside the lands between, and are supposed descendants of denizens of another world, long-lived but seldom born.
See, that would also make sense. Like, I think that if you are a being from outside of a dimension, you'd want another being from outside of a dimension to be your voice, your god, essentially. You'd want them to be your puppet, because they don't have the same, they wouldn't have the same loyalty to that place that the people who have always been there would.
At some point, Marica was chosen as an Empyrean. What is an Empyrean? Well, an Empyrean is a being chosen by the fingers as a candidate for godhood. As an Empyrean, Marica received the aid of a shadow to do her bidding. So what is a shadow? Well, it's a wolf, shadowbound to its Empyrean by the
very
two
cool.
fingers. Luna Princess Rani is another example of an Empyrean with a shadowbound beast. You would have met Blythe. These creatures are the Empyrean's very own shadow. They are completely loyal to their needs and, by definition, incapable of treachery.
Good.
Marica's shadow was a beast called Malakath. Every Empyrean uses their shadow in different ways, but Marica's sole need of her shadow was as a vessel to lock away destined death. So what is destined death? Well, according to Enya,
Oh my God.
it's the rune of death.
Okay, this is like that. I mean, he showed us that map, and it's like, yeah, this is convoluted.
Rune of Death goes by two names. The other is destined death.
We mentioned earlier that the Elden Ring is made up of runes, and at some point, maybe when she was chosen as a god, Marica plucked the rune of death from the Elden Ring. She gave the rune of death to Malakath, her totally loyal shadow, who bore a black blade imbued with this rune. It's kind of genius, really. In a single act, she removed the concept of death from the lands between, while also commanding total control of death through her shadow, who could deliver it at her whim.
Okay.
Now,
Dang.
some of you might be asking, if death is removed from the lands between, how come I can kill this dog? First off,
It's a turtle.
shame on you. Second, from a lore point of view, that dog isn't really dead. It's simply in the process of its spirit, or its soul, returning to the Erdtree.
See, I was gonna ask, like, is that why certain creatures can come back multiple times? Is that why you can come? Like, I like it in games when they give a good reason why you, as the character, can respawn. So like they do it in Shadow of War. There's a reason. So it feels like there's a reason here too, which is nice.
Catacomb dungeons, for example, are specifically constructed near the roots of the Great Tree for this reason, so that the Erdtree can reabsorb their ashes back into it. This process replaced the concept of a death that you were destined to have. But this random spirit outside of a catacomb dungeon says it best. As another example of this theory, when you kill a major boss, you receive a remembrance of them. These are spirits, and they are hewn into the Erdtree. In this way, thanks to the Erdtree's grace, their spirits are immortalized, in a sense. This new form of death also explains what's happening when you summon spirits.
From ash and return to the Erdtree.
Okay.
However, some spirits never return to the Erdtree, and they rise within death as corpses.
This is also partly because Deathroot, which we'll address in another video. course.
or skeletons instead.
To live within
So
death.
this was the new order.
Sickening.
And it's important to stress that it was in this moment, when the rune of death was removed, when destined death was taken, this is when order became the golden order.
The forbidden shadow plucked from the golden order upon its creation.
Specifically, this was Marica's golden order. So not only did she become a god and a vessel for the Elden Ring, she became renowned as Marica the Eternal for her removal of destined
yeah,
death.
can't die.
It was a huge part of her character and her reign as well. However, Marica had more than just death to conquer. She had wars to fight, as the world was occupied by many forces that could threaten her golden order. There was war with the Stormlord, who likely ruled over Stormvale, and there was a war with the Giants, who were masters of a flame that could burn the Erdtree. There was war with the ancient dragons, who incidentally had stones that could twist time and thus slay a god. And finally, there was war brewing with the Carrion royalty, who had previously obeyed laws which contravened the Golden Order. Thus, sort of similar to how the Greater Will needed an Empyrean to enforce its will, Marica herself needed someone to wage war. So, there was to be a husband, a consort, an Elden Lord.
Okay.
The man chosen was Horalu, a ferocious warrior who became known as the Lord of the Battlefield. His crown was warranted with strength, and while it was for this strength that Marica married him, he was also required to take a vow to conduct himself as a lord, to suppress the ceaseless lust for battle.
Right, people told me about this. That's why he's got the lion guy.
That raged within. Horalu took the beast regent Sarosh upon his back. You'll notice this is another example of a beast being given for the purpose of serving order. Thus, in this moment, he went from being Horalu, warrior, to Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, consort to Queen Marica, and a certified demigod.
And until the point where you have to go and kill him. He'll get to that, I'm sure. I've never been entirely clear about what you, the player character, is doing. Like, what's your goal here?
Godfrey and Marica had 3 demigod children together. There was Godwyn the Golden, who you saw being killed in the opening trailer, and there were also the reviled Omen twins, Morgoth, who guards the Erdtree, and Mohg, who became Lord of Blood. You might think that Godric was another demigod child, but he actually wasn't. Instead, he was probably descended from Godwyn. Anyway, we'll talk about the demigods more in detail in another video, so subscribe for that.
I think that's
But for now, just know that Godfrey and his offspring were the first demigods, henceforth known as the Golden Lineage. In his wars, Godfrey led his 16 Crucible Knights into battle, who were named so for they fought with the primordial powers of the Erdtree. Their incantations were aspects of the Crucible itself, and they likely fought giants, dragons, the Stormlord, and more to usher in their age, the age of the Erdtree.
In Marica's own words, "Hark, brave warriors. Hark, my Lord Godfrey. We commend your deeds. Guidance hath delivered ye through each ordeal to the place ye stand. Put the giants to the sword and confine the flame atop the mount. Let a new epoch begin, an epoch glistening with life. Brandish the Elden Ring for the age of the Erdtree."
Okay, so like I've always kind of got the vibe-ish that like these are like not necessarily the good guys. Maybe that's just because it seems like the player character is trying to kill them all. So maybe I just was like assuming they're baddies, but it's like everything they talk about, it's like, oh, that sounds kind of nice. It does sound a little bit erasing the free will-ish of her. I've always been a little bit unnerved by like pure order societies. Like they are scary and, well, fascist. But I'm trying to it's like, well, if there were already all of these horrible monsters all around, like just causing destruction and like, yeah, you'd want to get rid of them. That makes sense. I get it.
The Erdtree would go on to be largely seen as a blessing for all of those in the lands between, especially those close to it in Lanedell, the capital city of the Erdtree. The tree bestowed blessings. For example, the dew that dropped from its branches were like jewels. It loomed overhead as a constant reminder of order, and its roots reached far and wide, relieving many of the burden of death. In fact, Erdtree burial was one of the highest honors a hero could receive.
Okay.
One by one, the previous factions of the world fell. The giants were put to the sword, and their fell god was killed by Marica herself. The ancient dragons broke down the walls of Lanedell, but met fierce retaliation. However, I think the House of the Erdtree encountered the most trouble against the land to their southwest,
So beautiful.
Leonia. Here, the House of the Moon repelled their offensives time and time again. And I mean that literally, because there was not just one, but 2 wars fought here. And in both of these, there was no victory for the Golden, nor for the Moon. And I
Okay.
suspect it was probably because of these lobsters. These damn things can snipe you from like a mile away, and it's bullshit. Actually, it was probably because
I like that. He just like goes, oh, these particular monsters I had so much trouble with, and therefore I blame. I like it. Very funny. Very good, Vaati.
of the Carrier Knights, who, according to their weapons, were able to wield sorcerous battle skills, and despite numbering fewer than 20,
Dang.
this power made them a match for even the champions of gold in battle.
Wow.
These enchanted knights
I want
were
one of
anointed
those.
by the Lunar Queen, a young astrologer who went on to establish the House of Carrier as royalty in this land. With her bewitching lunar magic, she won over the Academy of Raya Lucaria, where glintstone sorcery was studied, and united the Carrion royal family and the learned scholars of Raya Lucaria defended their home from the golden aggressors. At the head of this great golden army was Radagon.
Lord Radagon was a great champion,
Turtle Pope. Love a Turtle Pope.
possessed of flowing red locks. He came to these lands at the head of a great golden host. When he met Lady Renala in battle,
These 2 champions clashed, fell in love, and joined their houses.
Radagon once cleansed himself with celestial dew, repented his territorial aggressions, and swore his love to Renala. The order of the Erdtree and the fate of the moon were conjoined, and all the
Okay,
wounds
that
of
could be
war
good.
forgiven.
You might
Nice.
think it's strange that the
Sounds
Greater
good.
Will would permit this union, but it's not too odd, all
No,
things.
I feel like the Greater Will wants control, right? And this seems to have brought like one of the factions outside of his control within his control. I feel like that would be exactly what he would want. It would want.
Considered. As with most From Software games, sorcery and faith are just 2 sides of the same coin, and both of these powers stem from the cosmos. Radagon and Renala were known to have 3 children together. Lunar Princess Rani, who inherited her mother's propensity for lunar magic, Radan, who took after his father Radagon and would go on to master gravitational magic, and Rykard, who pioneered new hex sorceries and would go on
Terrifying.
to feed himself to a great serpent.
Gross.
It follows that at some point after this, Marica began to harbor doubts. Doubts about the Golden Order that she had had a hand in creating.
In Marica's own words, I declare mine intent to search the depths of the Golden Order through understanding of the proper way. Our faith, our grace is increased. Those blissful early days of blind belief are long past. My comrades, why must ye falter?
And it's at this point that we should talk
so
about
she's starting to wonder if she's a puppet or if she's got her own power then.
Marica's motivations, her character.
Yes, please.
This is surely going to be one of those huge points of debate in the coming years, but for now, my working theory is that she wanted to discover the truth behind order and the truth behind the greater will, and she believed that bonds had to be broken so that they could be better understood. She believed that there was great meaning to be found in hardship.
Queen Marica has high hopes for us, that we continue to struggle unto eternity.
For Lord Godfrey, his struggle ended at the end of his campaigns. According to his armor, he led the war against the giants, faced the Storm Lord alone. And then there came a moment when his last worthy enemy fell. And it was then, as the story is told, that the hue of Lord Godfrey's eyes faded. In truth, he was robbed of his grace. Then Marica sent him away.
My lord, and thy warriors, I divest each of thee of thy grace. With thine eyes dimmed, ye will be driven from the lands between. Ye will wage war in a land afar, where ye will live and die.
Is that because she wants the suffering to happen? Because she feels like you have to suffer to ultimately be whole? Or like... Okay.
This became known as the Long March of the Tarnished, as Godfrey and his tarnished descendants walked away from the lands between. But Queen Marica absolutely had a plan here, that Lord Godfrey and his descendants would one day return stronger, having struggled outside of grace.
Okay, you know what? That I can see where she wants, where like, okay, that does explain that a little bit. She's like, because if you've always had everything handed to you, it can be very difficult to like act, to like, you don't know, you know, you don't, you don't know what it is to have had problems, to have struggled. So it's like, if you kind of get it, if you had to struggle, if now you have to be good on your own merit rather than some kind of magic, once you return, you understand, it's like you have a better understanding of, one, what everybody else is going through, but also it's like you have a better understanding of what you can and can't do and like what should and shouldn't be done. Okay, I get it. That makes sense. I think she should have told them that. But like, I understand where she's coming from. It still seems very cruel. But I get her mentality.
Then, after thy death, I will give back what I once claimed, return to the lands between, wage war, and brandish the Elden ring. Grow strong in the face of death. Warriors of my lord, Lord Godfrey.
Soon after, she found a new husband. Either that or a new husband was found for her.
When Godfrey, first Elden Lord, was hounded from the lands between, Radagon left Rennala to return to the Erdtree capital, becoming Queen Marica's second husband and king consort, taking the title of Second Elden Lord. The mystery endures to this day as to why Lord Radagon would cast Lady Rennala aside.
Yeah, right?
And moreover, why a mere champion would be chosen for the seat of Elden Lord.
It's a good question.
Whatever the case, as a part of this union, Radagon's prior 3 children with Rennala became demigod stepchildren, granted grace thanks to their new family tree.
Well, maybe that's why then. He did it for the kids. It's like, all right, well, okay, we'll leave you, but the kids are going to become demigods. They're going to have a lot more power. And if potentially, like, he and Rennala were still kind of thinking maybe we could do a little takeover, it would be helpful if the kids would have more power. Like, or even if not, even if it's just like they want what's best for the children.
Rennala was broken by this, and so was her country, Leonia. The Queen's set reads, when Rennala, head of both the Academy of Raya Lucaria and the Carian royal family, lost her husband Radagon, her heart went along with him. And then those at the Academy realized that Rennala was no champion after all. In the wake of Radagon's betrayal and Rennala's poor judgment, Leonia struggled with civil war, with the Academy of Raya Lucaria on one side and the Carian royals on the other. And it's here, during the age of the Erdtree, that Lunar Princess Rani, daughter of Rennala and Radagon, stole a fragment of the Rune of Death.
It happened during the golden age of the Erdtree, long before the shattering of the Elden Ring. Someone stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith, the Black Blade.
As mentioned previously, Malekith
That's-
was Marica's...
Dang, the skill that she has to have had to have managed that, though. Wow, good for her. But, again, she's got some demigod powers now. So, like, Dad left. Fuck him, but I guess now I'm more powerful, so yay?
shadow, and he had sealed destined death in a black blade. Then a fragment, only a fragment, of this Rune of Death was stolen. And once this happened, Malekith went a step further in protecting destined death. He bound the blade within his own flesh, such that none might rob death ever again. It was too late, however. This fragment of the Rune of Death was used immediately, that night, to kill a demigod, Marica's own son, Godwyn the Golden.
Okay, so it was retribution then. It's like, okay, all right. We're gonna kill a demigod. We're gonna kill your son because you stole my dad.
First recorded death of a demigod in all history, and it became the catalyst. Soon, the Elden Ring was smashed, and thus sprang forth the war known as the Shattering.
Now, there is a lot of really credible evidence that Marica was behind this plot to have a fragment of the Rune of Death stolen. There's also a ton of evidence that Marica is behind the entirety of your Tarnished quest, but we'll talk about that in another video.
Okay.
For now.
Damn it! I want to know. I want to know what the. Okay, so you're Tarnished, right? So that means that because the Tarnished were the knights that went away with Godfrey. They had grace at one point, and then the goal is to get them back to it at some point. But they have to learn how to like deal with stuff on a normal everyday basis first. So I could see it, and then Marica brings Radon in. Okay, I can see her. I can kind of see it though. I don't know exactly what her plan would be, but she does seem to be a sort of, she's a spider in a web. She's a master manipulator. She's got plans within plans, and she wants to see, she seems like a bit of a scientist. She wants to see what will happen if she plucks this, or if she puts this peg in this hole. She wants to know what's going to happen. Okay.
Now, all you really need to know, in terms of the timeline at least, is this. After the marriage of Marica and Radagon, and after a fragment of the Rune of Death was stolen, Marica went on to shatter the Elden Ring, and Radagon attempted to repair it. To no avail. The Elden Ring had been broken into runes, some great and some small.
It's said that Lord Radagon harbored a secret. A famed sculptor of the Erdtree capital was once summoned to render Lord Radagon's likeness in giant stature, when he glimpsed the skeleton in Radagon's closet. And as such, it's said the great statue harbors his secret too.
Of course, the huge twist in Elden Ring is that Radagon is Marica, or depending on what you believe, he became her, for she knew it was going to happen.
In Marica's own words, O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered, both. Mine other self.
You can tell when From Software is keeping something a little bit open-ended, and of everything in Elden Ring's lore, this will also go on to be one of the biggest unknowns as we move.
Okay, great, because I'm like, that makes no sense! Again, we're back to the wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey of it all. But like, so they are the same, but they're different, but they're two halves, but like, they could become one again. Makes even more sense that he'd leave Rennala, though.
Forward. For example, the wording, thou art yet to become me, reinforces that Marica and Radagon were two separate entities before the Shattering. However, in contrast, there is also evidence that Radagon was always part of Marica. For example, Enya says that
the demigods are each and all the direct offspring of Queen Marica.
But how can this be if Radagon married Rennala and had those demigod children? The only way that makes sense is if Radagon was always Marica and he just went over there to seduce Rennala long ago.
Oh, to
I'll
get
present
the kids.
more concrete theories in...
To get those kids. Because we need more demigods. Or it's like, I'm still thinking it's like, if it's possible that they could be like they were two separate people, he didn't necessarily even know that he was Marica the whole time.
In the future, but on this matter, the most important thing is, what do you think? While you can figure out a ton of Elden Ring's story, not all of it is open to interpretation. Certain things are, and this is one of them. And your interpretation is a big part of what makes this story special. At any rate, the union of Radagon and Marica seems to be a union of two fundamental opposing laws of the Golden Order. We mentioned these laws earlier, actually. There's the law of causality, and Marica is an agent of cause and effect. And there's the law of regression, as Radagon is a character who aspires to be complete and regress together. So I have a theory that forcing these two beings that represent these concepts together would have corrected Marica's deviance. But even so, she was imprisoned in the Erdtree for the crime of the shattering.
Marica's trespass demanded a heavy sentence. But even in shackles, she remains a god and the vision's vessel.
The conjoined Radagon and Marica even had two demigod children of their own, Miquella and Millennia. These two children were born afflicted. Miquella was cursed with eternal childhood, and Millennia harbored a horrific rot within. Even so, these two children were both chosen as Empyreans. They were immensely sacred beings and eligible to inherit godhood from the Greater Will. Perhaps the Greater Will was just desperate to find a worthy successor, and indeed in the
and one that wouldn't try and go against it like Marica did by shattering the ring. Yeah, the Greater Will wants someone that will do what it wants without questioning it. Again, though, that's one of the issues. It's like about giving someone, if you give someone a sort of immortality, it's like that just gives them more time to ask questions later.
Shattering war to come, many would try to claim the shards of the Elden Ring, and they would try to take the throne, including, of course, the Tarnished, who returned from their long march at long last, which we'll talk about in the next main lore video.
Damn.
I should probably also mention here that if you become a patron, you'll see upcoming lore videos early, as that's one of the rewards you get if you pledge to the $3 tier. And if you think my channel really adds a lot of value to the Souls games for you to the point where you pledge $20, then in this new tier, you'll receive a new mug every 3 months that has a unique design on it, to do with the games by From Software. There are 4 to collect. The first one you'll get is inspired by Dark Souls, then Elden Ring, then Sekiro, and finally Bloodborne. And they all have fantastic art that I worked on with an amazing artist named Chu. But anyway, I figured this is the right place to end this video because the information here is going to be overwhelming. I bet it probably was too overwhelming, you know? It took me ages to commit these names and the relationships they had with other characters to memory, so I hope you guys are doing all right. One thing that helped me a lot was that we designed an enormous mind map.
Yeah, that thing is crazy. That's wow.
Pretty much all of Elden Ring's lore, all of its item descriptions, all of its dialogues, all of the relationships between characters that we can think of. We added all of this together and it helped a ton in learning about the story and visualizing it all. And one day I will make this asset available to you all because I think after doing it, I think this is the quintessential way to piece together the story, and I think giving you guys this asset eventually will make that accessible for people. So I'm really excited about that. I want to thank Absa and Zard for accepting the paid task of helping me put all the raw data into this mind map so that I could better understand everything. I want to thank Paragod for fulfilling all of my footage requests and creating so many cinematic scenes for this video and for you all to enjoy. And I last of all want to thank John Devlin for the incredible thumbnail. And of course, thank you for watching. There are some really exciting things ahead, and I actually believe this might be the best story that From Software have ever put together.
Wow.
I just think not only are there so many amazing item descriptions, but so many of them are impactful. There are so many moments where you piece together the story and have like a eureka moment, and I'm enjoying it so much. But now I'm gonna go and play the game a little bit because I've been editing this video for too long. So,
sounds like it.
See you next time.
I mean, yeah, wow. This is it. I bet he was editing this forever. Good Lord. Wow. Oh, that was good. Okay. I really enjoyed that. All right. Well, I think I might have to watch some more of these videos then. Again, if there's like a specific one that you really want me to watch like first, then let me know. But up until that point, until people let me know about that, I'll just be watching them in order. So I feel like these are good videos to be watching right now just because, one, they are a little bit creepy. It's October. I want to be doing sort of creepy guy things as much as I can. I think it's fun to do sort of creepy things. So that's what I'm looking for right now. Just give me some spooks. Give me some spooks. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was entertaining for you as well as it was for me. I feel like I learned quite a lot. And I'm looking forward to the next one. Thanks so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.